Your car guy here. Today we're going to replace the injectors on this 2002 Toyota Corolla. It's a very easy job. There's not a whole lot to it. Fairly quick and simple. But I'll run you through the process as we'll get the injectors changed, and then we'll go ahead and test them and see how they're working. Okay, here we are under the hood. Now we're changing the fuel injectors, and they're mounted right here under the fuel rail. This is a pretty simple job. What we're going to end up doing, we're going to remove this hose, which just take and squeeze the clamp, pull it off, slide this out of the way. We're going to unplug our electrical connections, which if you see the tab on this side, you'll just simply squeeze it in and pull up to unlock them. Then we're going to have to take out a few bolts or nuts. There's one right here close to that connection that holds that fuel rail and keeps it solid. We're going to take off these two bolts here, and there is an isolator underneath them. That way we'll be able to lift the rail, but we want to get some room that we can lift it out and then work it out, swap our injectors into the rail, and then reinstall it. You can see I've removed my bolt. I've still got my fuel line hooked up. I'm going to leave it hooked up. I've removed the bolt that secures the fuel rail there. I'm going to take out these two bolts, but I've taken my wiring loose. I'm also going to take this whole wiring harness and move it just a little bit. The way I'm going to do that, there's these little tabs here that you can push and unlock. They have a little tab right up in here, and then I can push down on that tab, slide that to unlock it, and this will give me just a little more room to have the fuel rail move where I need it to. So you can see that when I take out these bolts, I'll be able to just slide this fuel rail. You may also find it necessary to take loose this bracket and get some room on the this is the cruise control cable actually right here, and that'll give us just a little bit more room and flexibility to work with this. Now that I have my bolts out that mount the rail, it's loose. Now when I go to lift it out, I'm going to kind of have to work and wiggle it a little bit and just come straight up. Most of the time all the injectors will stay in the rail, and that's what we want. We don't want them to pop out, not yet. The O-ring seal that holds them in the rail is much tighter. Now one thing you will want to do is, you see there's this gunk buildup, get a shop vac, vacuum that up. You have on these little rubber gasket isolators. Make sure to save those. You see one of them stayed in the cylinder head and the others pulled out with it. Just make sure you're aware of that and have everything nice and clean. Then we can simply pop the injectors out of our rail, and we'll pop our new injectors in. One thing that's good to remember before we install the new injectors is there's an O-ring seal where these slide up in. So we may have to twist and pull these out and just pull them straight down away from the rail. But that O-ring is very tight. When you're installing it, you can take and just a light film of oil on the O-ring will help it go in easier, or even just a little bit of saliva on that O-ring to help it just go in and not roll the O-ring as you're installing it and it pop out and cut, and then you'll just have a massive fuel leak. And there we are with our injectors removed out of our fuel rail. I've purchased for this vehicle, these are brand new Denso factory replacement fuel injectors. There's your part number there. I actually purchased the set of 4 from eBay. They cost about $100. There are a whole lot of other options out there, starting in the $30 range for a set of 4 for rebuilt injectors and matched injectors. There's nothing wrong with those. Flow matched injectors are great. In this case, I opted for the brand new injector. As well, the customer really opted for it because they intend to keep this car for a long time. So we're going to install these new injectors. Okay, with our new injector, I've put my lower isolator gasket on. The O-ring came with it. Now I'm going to take that O-ring and I'm just going to put a little saliva on it, and then I'm going to take and install it into the fuel rail from the bottom. And I may have to twist it a little bit as I push it in to pop it in. But remember too, to get your injector in with your wiring on the correct side. So if you're looking at this, they all need to come in so that your plugs are there, not here, underneath. So again, it all needs to come in so your plug's there, not underneath here. If you do that, you'll end up having an issue. Now you can move them in there, but you just want to be careful not to tear the O-ring there at the top of the injector. But if you put them all in the correct way, they're going to come in just like that. Okay, now I have all 4 injectors in the rail. It's just a matter now of putting the rail back in place very gently, making sure that our lower seals get in where they're supposed to and we get everything lined up. Now, what you want to do as you finish this job, you shouldn't have to force this too much. It may take a little wiggling and jiggling to get everything down in place, but you don't want to force it. You may have to just wiggle each individual injector one at a time, get the rail sitting down over those mounts, and then when we button up and finish, the last thing we're going to do is we run the vehicles. We're going to check really closely, and not just for 2 or 3 minutes, for fuel leaks. Let it run 10, 15, 20 minutes and watch and make sure we don't have a fuel leak, which would indicate that we've cut the O-ring when we were installing it or simply didn't get a good seal. All right, injectors are back in. We've tightened up our mounting bolts for the rail. We're going to then plug back in our harness and also plug in these clips that hold it in place. Make sure you get a nice positive clip. You'll hear it actually lock in place as you put your harness on. There, nice click. We'll get that on each one of these. Nice thing on this car, you're not too worried about mixing up, and pretty much any car with fuel injection. If you look, the harness is laid out so that you're not going to mix up the injectors. We're going to put our locking clips back in for mounting. Now we're going to put back on our mounting clamp here that captures that last locking clip, and then also our cable for our cruise control. And then we'll put back in our bolt back here on the mount. Sometimes that's a little hard to see underneath there, but you can see it there. We're just running straight down through here to put it in, and then we will put our PCV hose back on and we'll fire it up and test it. Real quick before I finish this video, I want to answer the question, what happens if I, for whatever reason, don't get that last bolt in that secures this bracket of the line? And would I be okay if I dropped it and I lost it and I leave it out? The answer is, short term you could get away with it, and by short term I mean maybe a few days, weeks, months, maybe even a year. But long term, what's going to happen is this line is going to move and vibrate. And as a steel line moving and vibrating, it may rub on one of the other components right here or right here, and eventually it will break. And then you're going to have a massive fuel leak, possibly a fire. Could be very dangerous. So if you lose that bolt, drop that bolt, find it, or go get a new one, put it in, do the job right. So this is your car guy. We've successfully installed everything. We've checked it for leaks, and now we have new injectors and a better running vehicle. Don't forget to like and share our videos. Please subscribe to the channel and help us grow.